everyone. I'm Ashley McManus, Senior Director of Global Marketing at SmartEye. Welcome to the Human-Centric AI podcast, where each episode we feature thought leaders doing cutting-edge work in the AI space. A little bit about us. SmartEye is the global leader in human insight AI, technology that understands, supports, and predicts human behavior in complex environments, bridging the gap between humans and machines for a safe and sustainable future. Today's episode features a product specialist at iMotions, Dr. Pernille Bulleau. iMotions is a fully integrated, hardware-agnostic software platform that allows researchers to use the power of any neuroscience technology, as well as traditional surveys and focus groups, to gain unparalleled insight into what people actually think and feel. Their customers use iMotions for everything from diagnosis of neurological diseases such as Parkinson's, schizophrenia, autism, and Alzheimer's to personal training, UX testing, advertising, and military human research. At iMotions, Pernille consults and trains academic and commercial researchers on multimodal biometric data collection and study design. Pernille finished her BS at UC Berkeley and completed her PhD in neuroscience at Emory University, where she studied brain mechanisms associated with the neurodevelopmental disorder Fragile X syndrome. Pernille is passionate about sharing her knowledge to help others create groundbreaking science. Penny and I talked about emotion AI in mental health applications, the role of biosensors in mental health research, and where this technology is heading in the future. Let's listen in to learn more. Okay. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. With me, I have Dr. Pernille Bulleau. Thank you so much for making the time to speak with me.
It is my pleasure.
Awesome. Okay. So to start, tell us briefly about your background. How has your career path taken you to iMotions, and what is your role there today?
Yeah, I love when I get this question. I got into psychology and neuroscience, which is ultimately what we do a lot here at iMotions, based on an interest that I had in understanding the big picture questions about human behavior. How do people become who they are? How are genetics influencing our behaviors, and to what extent does the environment affect us? In contrast to that, and why is it that some people are more susceptible to developing mental illness? And so all of these big questions led me to start a bachelor degree in psychology at University of Copenhagen, which ultimately ended up taking me to University of California, Berkeley, where I finished my degree. And during that stay, I also worked in a research lab where I investigated the effects of early life stress on brain development. So really got to dive in on that whole nature-nurture question. And after that, I completed my PhD at Emory University, where I studied different forms of brain plasticity and neurodevelopmental disorders, and then subsequently moved to Harvard Medical School and MGH, where I did a short postdoc looking at the interaction between touch and our stress responses. And so, although I really enjoyed doing all of this research, I also had this passion for communicating science and diving into literature across many neuroscience-related fields and not just what I was studying. And so while I was realizing that maybe academia was not the perfect fit for me, it coincided with when iMotions recruited me to become a product specialist. So now my main focus is to serve as a research consultant to people that already have a biosensor research experience or wish to start it. And so I also spend my time testing out new cool technologies that are the next frontiers in neuroscience research. So a pretty comprehensive role, but a lot of fun, a lot of consulting.
Yes, quite impressive. That's amazing. Okay, so we have had iMotions on the podcast before, but maybe you could give us a quick context around what your company's mission is and, the kind of organizations you're looking to work with and why.
Yeah, definitely. So at iMotions, we are a really big and holistic team of people where we have developed a software that can integrate data from multiple different biosensor devices at the same time. And so really the powerful aspect of what we do is that we enable synchronized data collection of distinct measures that can only be obtained with different sensors. So for example, if you want to understand attention patterns of groups or individuals, researchers traditionally only look at one metric, for example, eye tracking, or only EEG, or only facial expressions. Well, none of these measures provide a comprehensive understanding of attention patterns. attention patterns, so not just where you're looking at, and it's not just what your brain pattern or facial expression looks like.
Yeah.
So in order to understand attention patterns comprehensively, you'll need to use multiple biosensors. And the most scientifically powerful way of doing this is by doing all of this simultaneously. So making sure that you can synchronize the data from these devices. And that's what iMotions offers you. Another example could be that you're interested in understanding a range of behaviors, for example, during an experience. That could be when a person is watching a certain video, or we even have people watching, whole movies while we are doing this multimodal biometric research. And so you could have questions like, what are they paying attention to, but also what are they physiologically activated by, and what is their emotional valence towards something? And so this is a really common approach among our clients, particularly in mental health as well.
Okay.
But again, you need distinct devices to capture these distinct behaviors, and that's where we provide a platform to just plug and play almost, where you take all these different devices and you can synchronize it all to get all the data out simultaneously. So our platform is really geared towards conducting experiments that can capture data from multiple biosensor devices. And I know at this point people might be thinking, "Oh, this sounds really academic." We do actually work with a lot of private companies that use this technology, for example, for product development. So to answer the last part of your question regarding who are the people we work with at iMotions, the answer is really quite complex. We work with a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so the key for us is that the people we work with are interested in using biosensors to evaluate human behavior. And that is what our mission is to enable and support.
Awesome. Okay, so let's take a step back for a minute. After speaking recently with our Deputy CEO, Dr. Ronald Kalyubi, on the topic of emotion AI and mental health applications, I know you recently did an analysis of how certain iMotions customers are using your technology in this field. So, and it's actually the topic of a forthcoming webinar. So let's start with why you approached this topic in the first place. Can you tell us a little bit more about what was the conversation that sparked this interest?
Yes, definitely. This is definitely a passion project for me, and I'm so excited that it has taken wings and just become its own little thing. So it all started because Rana and I, we both have a personal interest in mental health. We do a lot of things outside of our company work that are related to mental health awareness and support. And so over lunch, a few months ago, I think in August or something, we started casually talking about how we are involved with different types of activities on this particular topic. And then after a while, as we grew more and more passionate, the conversation started turning into biosensor research. And we were wondering, how many people in mental health do biosensor research in general? And what type of research do they do? And do we even have clients at iMotions that use our platform to do mental health research with biosensors? And so this really sparked my interest to take a deep dive into how biosensors are used in mental health research, both by interviewing our own clients and by addressing the literature already published.
Amazing. Yeah. And I know that mental health is a really important topic. I'm somewhat familiar with biosensors and what they can do, but what are your thoughts on why the topic of biosensors and mental health research is a timely one? For example, anxiety, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, maybe you could speak a little bit about that.
Yeah. So mental health has always been a topic of concern to a lot of researchers and clinicians as well. Even before the pandemic, we actually had a rise in depression and anxiety. The US really stands out compared to other countries. It has an increase in suicide rates compared to the global average.
Wow.
So we can at least speak nationally about that there is an issue with mental health in this country. And that issue obviously can be related to a lot of different topics. It could be maybe we're not developing school systems well enough. Maybe we don't have the right treatments for people. Maybe we don't have the best follow-ups after people have received treatment. There's a lot of ways in which we could investigate what the challenges are. And a lot of people have done that.
Okay.
So this is just to say, like, there's a huge need to use, metrics, because one of the challenges is that we don't really have good metrics for a lot of these disorders. So we don't really know what are some biomarkers, for example, for different types of mental illnesses, and what are some ways in which we can go in and diagnose and actually predict which treatment is going to be better, like we, for example, can do with cancer or diabetes. And so while these needs have been developing, we have also had this huge rise in biosensor technology. And that is both as a part of laboratory research devices, but also simple wearables that anyone can access and use. So I bet the majority of the listeners out there probably are wearing some kind of watch or wristband that measures your heart rate or your galvanic skin response or something, that you're monitoring, maybe just for fun, maybe because you're trying to increase your performance at a particular sport. But these are actually devices that we can now start leveraging too for monitoring mental health. And so while traditionally research is conducted in the lab, this is really not an environment that truly captures what it's like to be a human, right? Like, obviously, lab research is really important and we should keep doing that. But the fact that we can now collect data from the real world is where biosensors are becoming incredibly powerful for mental health research and for understanding better, how can we improve our diagnosis, our monitoring, and our treatment of mental illness. So, while they have been around for a long time, this whole technological advancements is really made it possible in totally new ways to collect a lot of this objective research that scientists can now use. And that's hugely exciting in how we can rethink mental health and the treatments of it as well in terms of strategies.
Absolutely. So now let's look at maybe a more practical example of biosensors and mental health research. Maybe you could tease a little bit of the findings you have after speaking with iMotions customers in this focus area.
Yeah. So I would definitely say that there's no way I can comprehensively go over everything now. But
a little tease, little mention.
A tease. I think a really cool teaser is from one of our current clients, Dr. Ryan Jacoby. She's a researcher over at MGH, Massachusetts General Hospital. And she is using a combination of different biosensors to investigate biomarkers of rumination disorders. So rumination is like you keep thinking about the same thing over and over again. You just can't stop yourself. And so this is something that's really similar to, for example, people with anxiety experience it, obsessive compulsive disorder, but also people with eating disorders. Right. And so what is a biomarker? Biomarkers are these objective, often biological ways to measure a certain behavior that may be a symptom of disease. And so what she's doing is that she's trying to go in and use different biosensors to go in and identify, okay, do people with rumination disorders tend to display certain types of facial expressions? Do they have certain type of galvanic skin response or an eye tracking pattern that makes it possible for her to predict who is going to display worse symptoms, who is going to display the most effective recovery from different types of treatment? Mm-hmm. So she's doing a lot of really, really cool research on that we need much more of. And as iMotions, we are super proud of supporting her in that path.
Fascinating. So cool. So, also based on what you have learned, what are your thoughts on the future of biosensors and mental health research?
Yeah, there's a lot here. So one of the things that I think relates really well back to Ryan Jacoby's research, who, by the way, is going to be featured on the mental health webinar that we do in January. Telehealth and remote patient monitoring is something that is super relevant. Like, how can we identify if people suddenly start suffering from anxiety or depression? What if you want to monitor someone after they come out of the psychiatric unit because they had a suicide attempt, and you want to see, okay, are they very likely, and at what point are they likely to maybe commit another suicide attempt, that is actually something that's really common, and we just don't have strategies to intervene when they need the help.
Okay.
Then there's, of course, the backside, like, well, how can we, instead of figuring out, how we can treat people the best way and monitoring symptoms, how can we do early intervention studies? So, for example, in children and adolescents, to figure out, okay, they seem to be predisposed or prone to having certain types of thought patterns or behaviors. How can we use biomarkers to not go in and say that they are wrong or in any way judge them, but go in and help them make sure that they continue to live a happy and healthy life. And yeah, there's so many ways in which this can be used, and the future is really going in that direction. And that's what we're seeing with researchers too. Even people that are not clients at iMotions but come to us and they talk about what it is that they want to do. It's very focused on, well, how can we use this more remote link between hospitals in one area and then the patients somewhere else, or people somewhere else that they want to monitor in some way or another.
Okay, very cool. Was there anything that surprised you when you were interviewing clients, or any projects that you found particularly inspiring, aside from the client that will be featured on the webinar?
Yes, I have a tendency to find everything I hear about very exciting, in particular when it's about mental health. So I am a terrible person to ask about this unless you have hours to listen. But there were a few, I think, that really stand out. They both because they're really powerful, but also because they're a little bit more unusual and unexpected. One of them was how they were developing, these are current clients with iMotions, how they are using biosensors for generating an AI platform that can detect changes in chronic pain. And so we know that people with chronic pain are also twice as likely to develop mental illnesses. And in fact, people with mental illness are three times as likely to develop chronic physical illnesses. So these types of platforms are particularly powerful because they don't just address chronic illness or chronic pain or mental illness. It's really at the intersection and giving us a platform to monitor that. So those are current clients that are developing on that, which is really, really cool. Another one, which is not unexpected, but extremely timely, is a researcher that's doing mental health research in minority communities, particularly regarding sexual orientation. So he was really interested in understanding, how different advertisements or how different policies influence the self-perception of people that identify as LGBTQ, for example. So I think that was really relevant. And by the way, both of these topics will be something that we talk more about in future in future elements of iMotions. We have all of this really cool information, so we definitely want to make sure that we dive into it and spread it with listeners.
Fabulous. Okay, so if there are any researchers listening who are interested in the field of mental health and are considering biosensors as part of their research methodology, what advice would you give them?
Well, if you are in the field of mental health, I would highly recommend that you sign up for the webinar, which is going to be in January, so plenty of time to plan. Put it in your calendars. You have no excuse not to. But we're also going to have some more podcasts where we are going to be talking about, for example, work environments. We're going to be talking about education and performance research, all in the perspective of mental health. We're also going to have some blog posts where we're going to be talking about all of this stuff in regards like how you're using biosensors in mental health, both with use cases and drawing on all of the exceptional literature that's out there. So I'd say keep your ears tuned. iMotions is not really featured a lot on mental health before. So this is the first time that we're really coming out with a lot of really cool material on this.
Absolutely. Just to emphasize that point, definitely a lot of cool stuff in the works. So definitely keep following the team here for more forthcoming. So that is all I have for you, Pernille. It has been a pleasure. And thank you once again so much for taking the time to have this fascinating conversation with me today.
That was my pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to chat with me.
I am very excited to be rolling out this content series with Pernille on this really timely topic of mental health research. I thought the work of iMotions client, Dr. Ryan Jacoby, is doing with biosensors and rumination disorders was super fascinating, and I can't wait to see her talk more in depth about it on the iMotions webinar event. We have lots more content coming out on this topic in the coming weeks, so stay tuned for more. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed today's episode, so don't forget to subscribe to the Human-Centric AI podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts for new episodes. We're also on social media, so please reach out to us on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram to share any feedback you have on the show and weigh in on the discussion using hashtag Human-Centric AI podcast. Don't forget to rate us and comment with your feedback to help make the podcast more discoverable for others. Until next time, thanks for listening.